Hey guys, I'm on my way downtown this afternoon to talk with a group of people about heroin usage in the black community and about the violence and all the other stuff that's going on in our community. And I was just sitting thinking, going back over my own history and thinking what happened to me? How did I get strung out on heroin? What happened? And what's going on now? Because I'm at that age where I'm considered a baby boomer. So you start looking back in the 60s when I was 19 years old in 1965 when President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voters' Rights Act, and then 64 the Civil Rights Act. Also in 1965 they signed into law the Fair Housing Act. All of those had significant impact on the group of people that I came up with. At that same time, I call it a moral revolution, where all of a sudden, we forgot about all the things that kept us safe before the 60s. See, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas during the 1957 riots when President Eisenhower, signed into law the integration of all public schools. Governor Orville Forbes was the governor at that time. He's the one that closed down all the schools for over a year because he wasn't going to have any integration. So I came up during some real critical times, but we still never lost sight of the fact that we all needed each other. This whole thing about the Fair Housing Act was supposed to end discrimination, housing discriminations, allow black people to move into whatever area they wanted to. The Civil Rights Act allowed us to sit at the front of the bus and live where we wanted to, eat at the different restaurants. But what we did was we ended up bankrupting all of our businesses within the community. Because before then, we couldn't go to the hotels that were owned by the white people, couldn't go to the restaurants that were owned by the white people. When my dad got ready to take us out, he either took us out to the neighborhood restaurant in the neighborhood, or he had to go to the back door of a white-owned restaurant. We were there seeing all this. So when we got a chance to sit at the front of the bus and got jobs as checkers, grocery checkers at the Safeway and the Kroger stores, that was significant for us, and we thought we had really made it. And what happened was all the people who could afford to left the neighborhood and went to the white neighborhood, and where white people were started going to the suburbs then because they didn't want to be around us. But we stripped the black neighborhood of all the mentors, all of the people that we could aspire to be like, because when I grew up there were doctors and lawyers, school teachers, all in the neighborhood, throughout the fabric of the neighborhood. Around 1970, that was like somebody pulled a drain on all the cultural reinforcements that were in place to protect us from the environment. But, and then it just started going downhill after that, the 60s and the do your own thing, the hippie movement, and then from there to, the 70s movement, where promiscuous sexual behavior. Then we started, by the 80s, it was, the hip-hop era came into effect, was coming into play. And, a disrespect of women, the moral code of ethics, the moral code that we had lived by for all those years was gone. And one thing that supported that was the education. Our schools started failing us. Children were being graduated from high school and couldn't read. Graduated from high school and couldn't put a sentence together, couldn't write a letter. Everything was moving. You remember by 1980, 81, they were getting cyberspace was coming on board. Computers. We were still stuck into listening to agriculture. Those people had left the farms, but now they were in the cities and they were working on these jobs at General Motors and Ford and all those places. They could still achieve a middle-class lifestyle. But then all of a sudden it started going away. The middle-class lifestyle, no more. All of a sudden, you people in the neighborhood, dirt poor, trying to make it. No money, crime started on the rise, and we were locked into the containment zone. The containment zone, it was just about during that time that the violence initiative was passed. And the United States, the majority race, was getting ready for urban warfare. They knew that eventually there was going to be a revolt, a revolution. So they had to contain everybody, and they did. They did a successful job with these freeways. Contain black people in certain areas and monitor our behavior. Same thing was going on in Ferguson. Same exact thing, the containment zone. Once they blocked off 4 or 5 streets, they weren't concerned about anything. They put all of their efforts in those 4 or 5 streets. The night they didn't do it, that was by plan when they were over on Florissant, over there by the police department, and they were burning houses over on Florissant and Canfield. They did that by design. That was agitators put in the midst of our people. But this is the thing. Now they're talking about there's a heroin epidemic. There's always been a heroin problem in the black community. Always. Gangsters, majority race gangsters, they put it over there because they knew where there's poverty, there's pain. And heroin is a medication. It's a medication to some way numb out hopelessness, a lack of purpose, and inability to love oneself. So you see, whenever I hear someone talk about this, and they don't talk about the context in which this behavior and problem-solving skills that support it, then I know they're not doing a good job. You got to first understand the cultural context. You start thinking about a recent report a couple of years ago about the JVL, how it was made up of 1,800 families. Median family size was a mother and 3 children. Median family income was $11,000. 85% of the people over there didn't have a high school education. Now something is wrong with that picture, and you don't expect violence to come out of that. People living in fighting for the crumbs that's on the table. $11,000. Well, the federal government says that it costs a minimum $20,000 a year to raise a child adequately in the United States. $20,000 a year. Just to meet the basic needs of a child. I know a lot of this is subsidized when you get Section 8 housing, you get food stamps and all that, but it don't take away that subsidized housing and food stamps. It don't buy everything. It don't pay everything. It don't allow to have money to send your child to camp in the summertime. Those things are not provided, so the children sit around the neighborhood. They're bored, they're angry, they're mad. They see things they'd like to have, and there's no way of getting it. The only way they can get it is to go out and do something wrong. And then after they do something, how do you support that kind of behavior when you know that doing wrong is wrong? So now you turn back around and you start hurting other people. They hurt themselves. How did the drugs get in our community in the first place? I always wonder how we can always be charged, the victims can always be charged with the crime. How did the drugs get in our community? Somebody brought them in there. Somebody made it possible. No jobs, no way of improving yourself financially. And what you end up doing is you end up doing something illegally. I'm a strong believer. You can't do wrong until you first learn how to do right. So it's inevitable they're going to get caught and they go to the penitentiary. You got a disproportionate number of people locked up in the penitentiary now that are black people. We got more people locked up than any other country in the world. America, how could that be? Was the land of the free, home of the brave. You're supposed to be able to come here and everything changes. And there are a lot of ethnic groups that do. A lot of them that do. How come we didn't do it? Nobody messed with their cultural understanding of who they were. Nobody contaminated their mind, indoctrinated them to believe that being black was not as good as being white. See, these are real, true things. So we're not going to be able to address any of this stuff until we first get a handle on the cause, understand the context, the environment that all this stuff thrives on. Yes, I was poor when I came up. But because the neighborhood was together and we recognized that everybody needed everybody, we didn't feel the poverty, the impact of poverty as bad as it's felt now. You know, everything is sky high. You know, food is high, gasoline is high, transportation is high. You know, you start thinking about the thing that happened over in Ferguson. They say it's 27,000 families, 27,000 people over there, and they issued 31,000 citations. You know, they collected over $4 million in traffic fines to support the government. You know, a police force was made up of 50-some people, but two of the officers were black. One person on the city council. People were surviving and profiting on the backs of poor people. But the mathematics support that that's how everything is done. You know, if you can keep a people poor, you can keep them broke. But I'm not talking about poor financially, poor mentally. See, and then you can keep them broken, and they'll never rise up because they'll get satisfied with having nothing. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about this on the other side. I'm going to this meeting tonight to talk with some parolees, some guys in the Department of Correction about how they can make a change in their lives. I'm going to share the story with them how I